Wikidonist.com. Truth about tooth.
Good morning. We were talking about smile designing, and the biggest problem with the smile is the tooth. If you have a gap in front of the tooth, most of the people will be not interested in showing the gap, because when you smile, there are very few people who like a gap in the thing. I also acknowledge that, but most of the people don't like a gap between the tooth, because I have seen people who just close their mouth before they speak, because they think that the spittle can come through the gap which is already there. So, that is the most common problem that people come with. That is the minutest problem that people come with, and how we can correct it. A gap between the tooth is a problem that can be corrected in different ways. If the gap is very small, we can do it using a nano ceramic composite. We can just fill it, or we call it as a direct veneer. Direct veneer is when you come to the dentist will prepare the veneer on the tooth itself and then just close the gap. So, what happens in a direct veneer? Direct veneer can be done up to 3 or 4 millimeters maximum, but it is ideal in 1 to 2 millimeter gaps, so that we can fill the gap and it will not be noticed by somebody else that it is being filled. So, it is according, we will just correct the contour of the tooth and then just add a little bit on both the teeth, so that it looks the gap is closed. Or if you have multiple gap also, we can use this to correct it. Can only be done if the width of the tooth is not too much, or the height is actually adequate. Otherwise, what will happen is the tooth will look much more bulkier. So, we have to identify this and then we will have to correct it. So, the gap, the first and the simplest treatment is to do a direct veneer. The second option is actually what I told is another type of veneer, that is an indirect veneer. What are indirect veneers? Indirect veneers are thin flakes of tooth like material which can be fixed on top of the tooth. So, that is called as a veneer, and it is actually, you can get, there are some composite veneers which are already available, which can be just bought like that and just customized on top of, that is also a single appointment treatment. The direct veneer is also a single appointment treatment, wherein you can just do it in a single appointment, it is done on top of the tooth, just like that. There are indirect veneers which are already custom available, and we just have to customize it according to the tooth contour and then just place it on top of the teeth using a gum. So, and in that itself there is another type of veneers which is ceramic veneers, which is actually made for you. So, you can actually correct the color and you can do the shade and things like that, and it is much more this thing. It is a thin veneer which is actually stuck on top. It is just like a wood veneer, the veneers are basically things that can be stuck on top of the tooth, so that the gap can be closed. So, gap can be closed, maybe a little bit of size can be adjusted, then the contour can be adjusted, the color can be adjusted. These are the things that can be done with a veneer, and veneer is an option which is actually chosen by most of these film stars and things like that, to correct the shape, the color and the texture of the tooth, so that it will look much more brighter and it looks much more natural. So, this is one type of way to correct a gap, the veneer. That is the indirect veneers especially. There are different types of veneers, wherein you have to prepare, some need a prep veneers, that is, we have to prepare the tooth itself and then we will have to stick it on top of the tooth. There are non-prep veneers which are extremely thin veneers, which is actually like a glass or things like that. You may not be able to change the color in that, but otherwise we can actually do shape corrections and things like that using a thin veneers. Sometimes it is called as thin-ears, sometimes some people call it as in different ways, but there are micro veneers, that is very thin veneers which can be actually stuck on top of the, or sometimes they call it as lumineers and things like that. There are different brands which are using thin veneers to do that. So, there are, I told you about two ways. One is to do, some people call the direct veneers as bonding, or there are two ways. One is direct bonding veneers, or where you actually make a composite veneer to close the gap, or second way is to do a normal veneer. Then the other way to close the gap between the tooth is to go for orthodontics, or if you use a clear aligner, or if you can use a braces itself, then we can close the gap. So, these are the 3 or 4 ways where we can close the gap of the tooth. So, anyway, whether you are using an aligner or whether you are using a direct veneer or an indirect veneer, you have to make the space closed, and you should always match the next tooth to the side tooth so that it looks much more identical. That's the key to this thing. You have to make it identical, you have to make the space closed so that it looks much more beautiful. So, a gap can be closed. So, you should understand that gap can be closed in so many different ways. The cost also differs accordingly. If you have teeth which are actually proclined, it is better not to go for veneers or things like that, because it will add bulk to your tooth. Actually, it will increase the forward place tooth. If you are in a hurry to do something, if it is like your marriage which is happening, or if you have a special meeting to attend and then you have a gap in between the teeth, then it is easier to go for a direct veneer. And direct veneers also have stayed more than 10 years or 20 years, but it is much more easier to get a color on top of that, but an indirect veneer will not stain as bad as your direct veneers. So, all these things will determine. So, it all depends on what is your need, how big is the gap, how long is the tooth, how wide is the tooth, and how well it has to be done. So, and third thing is actually how proclined it is, the whole position of the tooth itself. If the position is wrong, it is better to go for orthodontics with braces, normal braces, or a clear aligner or an Invisalign or something like that. So, these are the ways we can actually correct the gap of the tooth. For more on tooth problems on smile designing, we are going to come with another video. So, please subscribe, please refer all the people by sending this video to all your friends on Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media you are on. It will help them to have a space closed or things like that, and more videos are yet to come. Please make sure that you also listen to it so that you can understand more about it and always come down for a great dental correction. Thank you, smile well and have a great day.
ഞാനിപ്പോൾ സ്മൈൽ ചെയ്യാൻ ഭയങ്കര കോൺഫിഡൻ്റ് ആണ്. എനിക്ക് നല്ല വ്യത്യാസം അനുഭവപ്പെടുന്നുണ്ട്. സോ ഭയങ്കര ഹാപ്പിയാണ്. താങ്ക് യു സോ മച്ച്.
How did you feel the surgical injection?
നത്തിങ് ലൈക്ക് 10 മിനിറ്റ് എനിക്ക് ഒരു പെയിനും ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നില്ല. ഇറ്റ് വാസ് നൈസ്. ഐ ആം സോ ഹാപ്പി.
Wikidonist.com